Hello faithful viewers, and welcome back to another Transformers review. This time we're looking at the Transformers Legacy Armada Hotshot. Yes, this is the new reinvention of the original Transformers Armada Hotshot figure. It is a timely update. Question is it better? Well, I won't shield away from the answer. Yes, it is better than the original. That's coming from someone who's never held the original once in his hands. So what am I talking about? Who knows? But objectively it is better. It's a modern figure, so you'd expect articulation standards to be superior, moulding, colorization, all of that. We'll get onto colour in a short second because you can probably tell from the lighting that we've got on here, something is a little bit amiss, and it's more evident in person obviously. But the general vehicle mode, it is very faithful to the original Hotshot, how he was in Armada. Very kind of blocky yellow sports car kind of thing going on here. The main change, I suppose, from the original version is the fact that the spoiler is split here, just due to the way it transforms. It's no longer across the rear end, and you've got the minicom port there still exposed. And we'll show you the minicom port in a minute because it still does actually work. It's no spring-loaded gimmick anymore, but you can still pop a minicon onto it. But overall, generally, it is a pretty decent vehicle mode, if not a bit too cartoony, really. You've got a very blocky grille, you've got some nice silver along the front here, some nice silver lights. You've got the engine block, which will become his blaster for robot mode. You've got black along the top there, translucent blue windows. You've got an Autobot symbol on the spoiler right there, which is nice. You've got a black strip along the side of the car. Coming to the underside, kind of obvious what becomes what. His head is hidden very nicely, but his arms are visible, and then you can deduce his legs being the front end of a car there. Now the car doesn't roll, I've noticed, on a flat surface. You can hear and see all of that friction against this. The tyres are not moving. Now they can roll freely across my hand like that, but for some reason on a flat surface they can't. And I did wonder if it was to do with these pegs which are hanging off there, but it's not, because they don't even reach the flat surface when it's flat like that. I know, I've looked. So this is poor. A car that can't even roll its wheels. Very, very poor indeed. And the other thing which I hinted at towards the start of the video regarding what looks off, the colour yellow, because you've got the same colour at the front and the back, he says, pointing at the wrong ends. And then you've got this here. This is the wrong shade of yellow. It doesn't match, and it's because it's blue clear plastic, and you can tell from the windows. This whole roof section is a different material to the rest of it there. And, you know, clear plastic, something to be slightly concerned about because it's more susceptible to breaking than the rest of it. And the fact that it's been retroactively painted to look like that, it just doesn't match, and it's very noticeable in person. So that's a detractor. The overall vehicle mode is passable. It's just a few nitpicks here and there. Now, the original Hotshot figure had a lot of gimmickry, and it was mainly to do with the whole power linking with a minicon. But also, before we start with that, well, before we show that, I should say, I believe on the original figure, the engine block had a gimmick where when you plug that in, the front of the car would spring open and reveal like these saw blade claw kind of things. Now, you can still open the front bumper like that, just like this, but you have to manually do it. There's no gimmickry going on here. So you can kind of get that whole idea that the original Hotshot had going on there with that. A little bit weird, and these are clearly the bottoms of the feet. It would have been nice if they'd have been painted with, you know, a little bit of something as reference to that, but you know, it is what it is. At least you can still do that. Now, the minicom port at the back here, it does not activate the tyres to come up into his cannon, but you can still attach a minicon here. So I just happen to have the original Jolt from the original Hotshot, despite not having the original Hotshot. Anyway, and you know, I might as well review Jolt here because I don't think I've ever reviewed Jolt on his own. He's a nice little red helicopter. He's very basic. little bits of silver on him, visible head syndrome, arms like that. He's cool and everything. Easy enough transformation, rotate the cockpit like that, bring the arms down, bring that down. There you go, he's done. Silver face, decent proportions. This spins really nicely. Ball jointed shoulders, that's kind of it for articulation up there. You've got a joint at the hip, you've got a joint at the knee, so you can do an over 90-degree bend, but that's due to transformation. Nothing overhead. Very, very basic minicon, as you would expect. So let's just get him back into vehicle mode. Piece of cake it is. You see, he's already done. And then there's a couple ways that you can attach him to Hotshot, because he does have a couple of ports there. Now, the way I do believe he connected in the cartoon is via this front one here, and you can bend that down, and you can bend it down, but you're going to have to bend it at a slight angle because it can't go all the way down, because it will actually droop lower than the car itself. But you can kind of recreate that gimmick. It looks a little bit daft. He doesn't hold up as flush against the rear of the car as you would on the original figure, but you can still recreate it. And then you can also, if you so desire, take the port at the end of the tail there and had that on, which looks even more ridiculous, but it's a thing you can do. Now, in terms of transformation, it is fairly simple. It's more involved than the original Hotshot, but then again, I don't have the original Hotshot, so I can't really compare that. But the first thing we want to be doing is just taking off this engine block, which tabs itself in quite securely, and let's discard that and put it to the side. Then we want to be opening the doors like that, and just rotating them over the front wheels like that, and then systematically disassemble the car and split it in two. So wiggle. It's very tight. It is a very, very, very tight connection. But wiggle all of that, and that has just split him right down the centre. Word of caution, we do have some clear tabs there. They might break at some point, especially if you just disconnect him the way I just did. Be very careful. And we want to hinge the front half of the car basically down, out and down like that. So you're extending it essentially and revealing his chest and where his arms are. Then we want to rotate the front of the car that way round, and then take the roofs, rotate them like that because they're on ball joints, to these little yellow bits and fold them in, and then rotate them to the top here. There is a small little yellow tab at the very bottom there, and then there is a blue cutout there, and technically it tabs in, but it is a very, very weak tab. Don't expect it to stay in. And the final thing we do really for the leg is to tab all of that in at the knee and fold out the foot just like that. On the other leg, rotate that all the way to the back, tab it into this measly, flimsy little peg, just like that. Again, it's pretty bad, and just have that like that, and rotate him at the waist. So now I've got a figure like this. We want to be taking the arms and just rotating the back like that, and then take the spoiler, fan it up like that, and then take the whole rear of the car, bend it back, and basically double hinge it on itself like that. Now, again, like the legs, it's meant to tab in. There are a couple of red tabs on there. There's a couple of slots on the inside of there. But it's such a weak tab. It won't hold. And it is almost completely reliant on these shoulder pads. And we'll deal with them last. The thing we want to do first is open up the chest, flip the head out like that, reclose the chest, and now tab the shoulders in. And that kind of secures the backpack. It's just a little bit of a shame that it does have tabs that are practically useless. Poor design there, but otherwise there we go. That is Hotshot fully transformed into a very fateful looking robot mode, and I like the way he looks. Generally, he is, he's just more form-fitting than the original very hideously blocky and spread-eagled original Armada figure. This looks very, very faithful to the cartoon and the original vision for Hotshot, and especially if we have a look at that noggin, spitting full of detail, lots of moulding on the crest of the head there, nice shiny blue eyes. He even has like the teardrop patterns on his cheeks underneath the eyes, which is faithful to how he originally was. He even has the visor that comes down and sits over his eyes, and he's not very stable on his feet, but he's got that as well. It's shiny blue, which would suggest some form of light piping, but he doesn't actually have any, which is bizarre. But I like at least that they've gone to the effort of the different colour there to kind of give him like a heads-up display sort of thing. I actually think he even had the blue in the cartoon, so it's very nice that they've actually gone to the effort of including that. Now, he does have good detail on his torso. He's got a nice Autobot symbol on his shoulder there. I do question this, though, because it looks like he's meant to have an Autobot symbol on his chest, yet it's suspiciously missing. Odd. Coming down to look at his arms, you know, there, once again, faithful. They've even kept the moulding of where his original windows ended up. For this figure, they've ended up on his legs, as you can see there. On the original, they were on his arms. That's just a small reference to it, which, you know, that's fine. Kind of redundant, hence why they've all painted it black, I suppose. They could have just remoulded it. That wouldn't have hurt, would it? As I said, the nice silver there. Legs are a bit bare, that's to be expected. The shins, they are missing some silver detail that they had on the original versions. That's a little bit disappointing, makes them look a little bit bland, but they do have some decent detail and moulding on there. So, you know, you can't complain too terribly much. It is just an obvious thing that is missing. Kibble galore on the legs, though. Just the way that they've advanced the engineering for the transformation and to make him a better figure all around. You know, some sacrifices have to be made, and rather it being on the arms, they've transferred it to the legs, and we'll see that kind of does hinder articulation in a little while. The feet, you know, they're fine, and he's got that backpack, which of course he is meant to have, so we can let that back kibble go. Decent profile all around. It cleans up a lot better than the original Hotshot, let's at least say that. For accessories then, here is his engine block blaster. Once again, very faithful, double-barreled, some nice pipe work on the side there, nice little grooves cut in everywhere. It's got a double handle to it though, which is kind of bizarre, and I wish they found a way to just have the one handle. Now, I know why they've done it, just because of the way that the leg transforms, you have to have the two ports in there, just because it's impossible to have the one. For him holding it, it's just kind of bizarre. I believe you're really meant to use the outside one. It fits in securely, don't get me wrong, but it's just makes it more tricky, and, you know, it is not centralized, and it didn't really need to be that way. But, you know, he can hold it, at least. At least he's got something. If he didn't have a blaster, then less points in the figure, so at least he's got that. With the original figure, one of the Minicon gimmicks would be to bring up his shoulder-mounted cannon. You just manually do it with this one, so just detach the wheels, which don't tab in, but it is a very hard and thick and tight pin joint in there. So you just bring that up, rotate it, and there you go. You can close his visor down if you want the full look there. And there you got Hotshot looking badass with his shoulder cannons on shoulders, but don't stay tabbed in. Get back in there, you little thank you. There you go. I don't know which way round it's meant to be. Presumably that way, because presumably that's blast effect compatible. And yeah, it's nice that they've still managed to find a way to include that. That's very much appreciated. In terms of articulation then, Hotshot's head is on a swivel, so he's capable of doing 360 degrees. But there is no up and down looking, unfortunately. You can just wiggle a slight bit, but that's it. At the shoulders then, he can move his arms out that far due to the blockage there, but, you know, they don't like to stay pegged in, so you can achieve that very, very easily. In terms of moving them out that far, that's pretty impressive. At the elbow, 90-degree bend. He has a mushroom peg swivel at the bicep of 360 degrees. That's it for the arms. He's missing crucial wrist swivel, mainly because of the moulding there, which it's moulding that's not needed. So yeah, arms could be better. No ab crunch of any kind at the waist. He's got 360 degrees of swivel. The legs, forward kick, decent. That looks really weird, doesn't it, with all that gappage. Backwards, that's pretty good. He has a beautiful spread, as we can see with that leg right there. In terms of thigh rotation, 360 degrees of swivel. At the knees, now we can see this leg has become unpegged, so let's just tap that back in. At the knees, it is below 90, despite that. Let's get that there to show what it actually is. So that's below 90 degrees because of all of the kibble. Disappointing. But that doesn't tab in very well, so you can very easily achieve a full 90 degrees. And as we demonstrated, he has a tendency also to become untapped at the knee. So you have this very awkward and unnatural bend that you can achieve right there as well. That's a little bit disappointing, Hotshot, not going to lie. And then at the toes and the feet, he has arguably toe wiggle thanks to the pin joint there for transformation. And then interestingly, his feet are tabbed in. You can untab them, and he's got ankle tiltage. So that's nice. Overall articulation then is decent, but I've seen better. For comparisons then, here he is next to fellow Legacy Transformer. This is Cybertron Override, Voyager class, as opposed to his Deluxe class. Here he is next to Legacy Armada Starscream. So you can see two modern interpretations of old Armada characters up against each other. Here's Hotshot with the only other Hotshot I have in my collection. So this is Energon Hotshot, his, in quotes, successor. And then naturally, here he is with Mysterio. To transform Hotshot back into vehicle mode, let's get rid of that gun and put it to the side. And then we'll start here at the upper torso with the shoulders and just untap them and raise them out of the way. Let's open up his chest cavity and let's fold his head back and reclose that. And then, as you can see here, all of this just wants to fold itself up because it doesn't peg in particularly well. We can go ahead now and just double hinge the shoulder pads back and get them into place like that. Rotate the rear end of the car up and basically over the shoulders like that, and then take the arms and rotate them inward so that this part is facing outward on both, just like that. Now let's rotate him at the waist 180 degrees. Once again, just trying to pin his arms up against the torso like that. And then we can rotate the legs at the thighs inward so that these bits are now facing upward. We can close his feet up, and then with the doors we want, well, not the doors, the top of the car, the roof, rotate it both halves to the top like that, and then spin them at those ball joints until they are like that. They will just clash into each other, so you just got to be a little bit patient. And then flipping him the other way round, untab them where they are locked in at the knees, and then we are just going to accordion them on these hinges up like that. So you're basically shoving them up toward the rest of the car body like so. And then it's just a matter of trying to tab everything in. But before we begin that, on the underside of the roof here, there's these little bits right there, so let's just rotate them out, and they'll be the final connecting pieces obviously to the back end there. So if we take this systematically, let's start at the front and let's just try and clip that in like that. That allows us then to peg that in, and then clear plastic tabs. We'll try and tab all that in together, just returning to the front just to pin all that in and finish off at the back there. And that's all nice and neat. And then we'll just finish off with the doors, closing them and tabbing them into the slots exposed in those rear parts of the arms, like so. And then the final thing is to take the engine block, tab that back in the front, and there you go. Hotshot retransformed into vehicle mode. So that's been our look at the Legacy Armada Hotshot, the updated version of that old character. He's fine. The thing that I think I take the most issue with is the tabbing constraints that he has about him. The backpack doesn't tab in very well, the shoulders don't tab in very well, the kibble on his legs doesn't tab in very well. He's arguably better and objectively better than the original Hotshot that came out. That doesn't take a lot. That was a very gimmick-heavy figure. And this one is more focused on general aesthetic, I feel, and just creating a more modern and more proportionate figure than the original one was. But there are still quite a lot of restrictions on this guy. He doesn't roll, he doesn't tab, he's not very good in terms of articulation still, because of all the kibble and the way that the arms work as well. You know, they can rotate out, but he's missing some of that forearm articulation, which is essential for modern Transformers. But I think a lot of it is just down to the general design of the Hotshot in question here. His design invokes a lot of restrictions, and maybe that can't be helped. So do I recommend him? Well, he's decent enough to recommend on the whole, especially if you are an Armada completionist. If you are nostalgic for that toy line like I am, definitely get him, because he's a very good update of the original. But you know, in terms of modern Transformers and what they're capable of and engineering and all of that, he's missing a few bits of detail. There are certain things which make him not as good as some of his peers. So if you were to miss out on him, I don't think it would be a great loss. But certainly if you are nostalgic for the character, definitely get him, because he's nice and fun. He is small though, but you know, that's Modern Deluxe is for you. Thank you really so much for stopping by and checking out this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and share it around to help out the channel. And until the next time, see you all later.